This is the Book Deal Podcast Monthly Takeover by your host, Natasha Rai. I'll be bringing you even more debut and seasoned authors as they talk about their path to publication.
The Book Deal Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Kaya Wilson is a writer, tsunami scientist and lover of all things ocean, who somehow finds himself living in Canberra. Their first book, As Beautiful as Any Other, was listed by The Guardian as one of the best books of 2021 and shortlisted for the 2022 ACT Book of the Year. Their second book, a queer coming-of-age novel, Romeo, A Tale of Four Jumps, is in submission. Hi, Kaya. Welcome to the Book Deal Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So we're here today to talk a little bit about your publishing journey and how you got your first deal. But before we get to that, I would love to hear your elevator pitch for your memoir. As beautiful as any other. Yep, straight up.
Yeah, look, I've never been great at the elevator pitch, but I will give it a shot. The other day I called it emo memoir. Look, I'm actually, it's been a few years now and I was looking back at it and I feel really proud of it, right? It's memoir, it's broken up into thematic chapters and it sort of covers the period of time in probably one of the more formative times of my life when I began my gender transition, sort of emotionally and medically. And it's sort of about everything that got me there and then where I thought it was going to take me, essentially.
Thanks. That's a great pitch.
Thanks. Yeah, I did an event with Diana Reid, and she was like going off the charts, super successful with Love and Virtue at the time. And she had this pitch that was rehearsed, nailed, managed. And that is something I want to do for my next book. It's my new book resolution to get that pitch nailed in a way that, everyone can understand who doesn't have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so. I think I find it really hard not to roll my eyes and make a stupid face after I do the pitch.
So you've got one, but you've got one prepared though. That's half the battle.
Well, I've had to, because it's so close to release. So I've had to kind of practice it a lot.
Absolutely, and especially with fiction. Yeah, if you can I would love to get you to do it now, but I'm not going to do that because it's not your job today. But I look forward to hearing it live on radio someday.
Exactly, some other time. So I don't know if you remember, but you gave me some excellent advice many, many years ago. So you and I we both had pieces in that Me Too anthology that came out in 2017, I think, or 2018.
Yeah.
And we were doing an event together. And before we went on stage, you said to me, just be careful because when you're up there and there's a lot of lovely, supportive people around, you might say a bit too much or you might share a bit too much about yourself. And later on you think, oh, I really didn't want to do that. So I was thinking,
I was going back in time. Yeah, go on.
So I was thinking about that advice that you gave me. And I was wondering if that plays or had a part to play when you approached your memoir. How do you even start something like that kind of a project?
Yeah, I mean, these are boundaries, right? We're talking about boundaries. And I think, at the time, it's part of everyone's psychological evolution. And it's interesting for me to hear from you what I said at that time. Because I think I was really learning a new type of boundaries, especially in terms of being in the public eye to a small degree. With the book, absolutely, I do think of it as a boundaried text, even though there are some quite exposing or vulnerable elements to it and moments that not everyone's going to share. And I think there's a few things in that. And there's lots of people who approach memoir in different ways, right? So some people, it seems to be that most people who write memoir find a way to say what they need to say, and that might be either fictionalizing it or classing it as autofiction or something that gives them a little bit of liberation from being exposed, or they do something a bit like what I sort of did, was like write it first and then come back to sort of edit what you don't want to be made public. And like there are certain things about being from a slightly marginalized identity that can feel exposing in some ways, or you feel like are overexposed in general. And you feel like you don't want, that I felt like I didn't want people to fixate on, or I felt needed to be presented in a certain way, because we don't live in a vacuum, right? And yeah, there are some things that I did couch somewhat, and that's also kind of interesting for me, because some of those things I did hold back on really came out in my fiction. So I think the things that need to come out at some point. It's just you need to control how it's done in a way that you feel comfortable with. And so sometimes your boundaries evolve, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel about that Me Too experience. And it's interesting thinking back now, like, wow, like the Me Too movement, that was quite a heady time, wasn't it?
It really was.
Yeah, and it
so
feels
much hope.
almost it feels almost quaint.
Yes.
In this day and age. Yeah, but yeah, so boundaries, important, hold them, and also establish them before you publish. That's the other thing.
So for you, Kaya, you wrote it, and then once you kind of went back to it, did the themes emerge, or did you have themes in mind that you then could move things around to fit?
Yeah, themes absolutely emerge. So I actually wrote it in a more conventional chronological way. It's probably a series of like 80 essays of about like 1,000 words each. And I went back and I just tried an experiment one day where I tried to weave two things together. And I wrote a 5,000 word chapter, and I was like, oh, this is good. And it was thematic, and I was like, oh, thematic works. I was like, oh no, I have to write the whole thing again. And then I wrote the whole thing again, and it just the themes to me are what rose to the top. It was the talk about A story and B story. It was the real meaning kind of came to the top when I made it thematic. And yeah, so sometimes when things are thematic, you can hide some of the content.
Yeah. And, for some of our listeners who are considering or who are working on memoir, how did you look after yourself? Well, because I assume that parts of it must have been quite difficult to write.
Yeah, absolutely. It was part of writing. It was part of looking after myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my entire mental health strategy.
It's a good one, though. Like it's almost like a catharsis, right?
And it's making sense of things, and it was a way that I have made sense of things in the past, and I think a lot of people do get that from writing things. I mean, I did also have therapy, etc. But yeah, it was so important to my way of understanding myself in the world at the time that it's quite hard to even separate it out.
So you write this memoir, you put it into an order that makes sense to you in terms of themes. So tell me a little bit about your publication journey after that, because I know that you've had lots of short pieces and lots of publications already under your belt by that point.
Yeah, so that was, I'd say, strategic, actually, the short pieces. And when we talk about boundaries, some of the short pieces are the things that I probably feel the weirdest about. And then also like now that kind of like first person opinion piecey type stuff, I'd barely even read it anymore. Like I think it was just for me legit a phase, or even like maybe a phase in media at the time that I was a bit more engaged in. But that aside, the emotional or attachment to it aside, getting some things published is super important.
Yeah.
I think for me it worked, right? So I had short things published online, a couple in print, and then 2 anthologies, and then a book. So for me, the linchpin to all of it was having an agent. But it goes the same with an agent or not, right? Because either you are pitching yourself or the agent is pitching you. So you still need to have something to pitch.
Mm.
Having something published means that not just you, but someone else has said, oh, we think this is good enough to publish. My agent got me sort of, well, kind of got me the invitation to apply or send a piece in for the Me Too anthology.
Mm-hmm. So before we go into that, can we just take
Okay.
one step back?
Yeah.
How did you get your agent? A lot of our listeners are very interested in the details.
I mean, this is probably, like, I knew her socially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of an annoying thing to hear, because it sounds like, oh, who you know, or having connections. And I did know someone semi-famous, well, actually knew someone pretty famous who she was the publicist for.
Right.
So she knew all about, like, publishing. So my agent is Jane Novak. She knew about publishing. She was the publicist at the time when I first met her. I really liked her. I saw her in action with well-known writers in a publicist role, but for, like, people who are stratospheric, they kind of have a personal publicist who follows them around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that. But yeah, so I'd seen her in action. I'd seen her be very sensitive and just really switched on. So I kind of knew how she worked, right? And then she started a literary agency later down the track. And then I was like, look, I'm writing some stuff. And she was like, send it through. And she was happy to take me on. She's also, like, takes people on not in a kind of, you sign a contract and that's it. It's sort of more like, I will sell each book that you produce, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew. So I knew her, and I trusted her already, and that's why I went with her.
Yeah, and Kaya, even though you might have known her, it still comes down to the quality of your work. Like, she's not going to just say yes because she knows you.
Yeah, and she has said no to me before. So like, I did have a novel that she was like, the voice is wrong. It doesn't work. Okay. So like, yeah, I also trust that she'll say no to me, which is quite good.
Yes.
Having said that, I have introduced other people to her, or tried to, and then she said, just tell them to email me on my website. And I'm like, well, okay, so that's how people get her anyway. So me having an introduction. So, okay, I have introduced several people to her. Some people she was like, just tell them to email me. So that's like her blanket response. One of them was a friend who she then took on, whose book I had read. And then there was another one, which I think is one of the most brilliant books that's coming out with a different publisher in New York, or with a publisher in New York anyway, this year. And she said, no, she was too busy. So whatever's on her website, if you email her and she says, I'm too busy, she means it.
Okay.
So my point, what I'm trying to make, is that whatever she says to me is the same as what she says to a random person approaching her.
Yeah.
So although I knew her already and she had a social obligation to at least respond to me, she still also responds to strangers.
Yeah, she tells the truth. Like, she tells the same thing. Yeah, it's not special treatment or something.
The only thing it meant is that I didn't shop around. And like, I haven't made tons of money in writing, but like my first offer for my memoir, she bargained it up to an amount that exactly covered her cut. So I don't know. I've already, she's paid her way already.
Yeah, I do. So you had Jane on your side, and then she pitched you for the Me Too anthology. Yeah.
She said, do you have anything you could put in here? And I
see. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, you sent her your kind of bigger, like your full-length memoir.
Yeah. Well, after that, then I actually sent her some of the early drafts. I said, this is what I'm writing. And she was like, great, get back to me when you've got a full-length book. And that was actually one of her key bits of advice, which I've continued to use. It's, I'd say, less advice than a strategy. And it's to write your full text, have creative control, and then submit it. So, because if you submit, for me particularly, that's what worked. I don't know if she gives that advice to everyone, but if you say submit a few chapters and then you get a deal, they can often want to influence your creative direction.
I see. Yeah. Which must be very difficult if you're writing memoir. because it's your life, right?
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like sometimes it can probably be gentle. I mean, I heard about Kate Holden's publisher talk about, she wrote In My Skin. She's about what do you call it? Maybe middle class heroin addiction story or sex work, like so sort of sensitive issues. And her publisher said, I want your mum to be in every chapter. I was like, oh God. But like, you know, so that's, I guess, gentle or advice that maybe really worked, but like that creative control was important to me. And since then, when people have tried to tell me how to solve a literary problem, it just doesn't work.
Okay.
I'm really happy taking advice on the problems, but I need to come up with the solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your work? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Steve, and I've written a novel called First Name, Second Name, which is about 4 generations of 2 migrant families, one Chinese and one Scottish, who come to Australia and become one. The protagonist is a corpse who is on a nocturnal pilgrimage back to the town of his birth in far north Queensland. I started writing First Name, Second Name when I discovered that my own second name, family name, was an anglicised amalgamation of 2 first names, and it bothered me that my ancestors had allowed this to happen, and it made me think about what a migrant is prepared to lose when they come to Australia and are so keen to fit in. And so the book is a reckoning with the past, and it is about intergenerational trauma. It's about navigating a mixed-race existence where one race is more accepted than the other. But it's also about being an eternal outsider because the protagonist is on a search for his sexual identity, and this causes a family estrangement. It's complex, but it has been described by Michael Muhammad Ahmed as being a portrait of who we are now and who we are destined to become. And that's a lot to live up to. But if you get to read it, I really hope you enjoy it. It's out now via UQP.
What happened after you kind of got it into a form that you were happy with and she felt was ready for submission?
Yeah, so first up, that took longer than one wants it to. I was pretty impatient and that just took longer than I wanted it. And too bad. Okay, that's what happened. So then she is kind of like a matchmaker, right? So she picks a publisher who she thinks will understand and honor the work and work well with the author. And she picked Matilda Imler, who was then at Picador, which is an imprint of Pan Macmillan. And she was incredible. So I'm missing a step, actually. So she picked her. But also in the meantime, I applied for every single emerging writer competition, event, fellowship that I could find, and I was shortlisted for a bunch of them. I ended up winning the only one that had no money. But
well, congratulations anyway.
In the end, it was a great deal. And part of what the fellowship offered, it was Writing New South Wales Varuna Fellowship, and it offered a week at Varuna and a manuscript assessment by Matilda Imler, with the publisher at Picador Pan Macmillan, and then. So she provided the manuscript assessment. I took the feedback that she gave me, worked on it, and then Jane then resubmitted it to her.
Amazing. So you already had that connection with her and that.
Yeah.
And that's really important, isn't it? Like so many of those competitions, even if there's no money, the opportunity to get in front of a publisher or to have a relationship can be so important.
It's pretty priceless. And it also means like, so some of those competitions lock you in or kind of lock you in, right? Or like, yeah, this was an assessment, great, knew who I was. And then, yeah, you're not anonymous when you do send it. Yeah.
And so after she resubmitted it, did you have like a long wait? Like how did that play out?
That is hard to think about. I couldn't tell you how long it was. It would have been less than a month.
Okay. That's pretty good.
I think that is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think industry standard is probably within 6 weeks, but I'm sure there's plenty that go over. I've had some go over actually recently. So, yeah.
And it was a yes.
It was a yes, which was magic. Yeah. So
Amazing.
that was also a beautiful experience. It was like, okay, it was very stepped. So it was like, okay, enter the competition, get the thing, have that relationship, work on it, take your time, resubmit. And it was like, okay, you lay the ground, and then it was a yes. So in one sense, I didn't get a no. I didn't experience a no with that first book. But like, it was almost like the groundwork had really been laid. So like any opportunity for a no would have known about ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you did all that important work by entering those competitions as well. Yeah.
And I guess some of those were almost like no's. But in a way, it felt smooth, even though it was a sort of cumulative kind of process.
Yeah. And what was the kind of process like once you got that offer? Was there another few rounds of editing?
Yes. Yeah. So there was actually quite a big, because I was like, great, done, sweet. No. Also, I was like, okay. Also, now I just like collect my check.
Yeah. Open my champagne.
And although I do think it's something, actually Liz Duck Chong has said to me, like, it's really important to celebrate each milestone. And I really try to honor that, which is nice because you're always on to the next thing. So it's always good to like stop and go, okay, yeah, great. Let's open that champagne or whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And in terms of, okay, so then they read it, then they sent it to, there were actually there were two main editors. So there was like one person who did like a deep edit. And then there was another person who kind of did another type of edit. And then there was a line edit. So the deep edit was pretty full on. And required quite a lot of work after that. And I'd say, I probably had it for 6 weeks or so, but like working on it quite a lot, weekends. Then, so I'd say maybe 3 or 4 rounds of edits.
Yeah. And just on that, given how some writers can feel quite not precious, but very protective of their manuscripts and its fiction, how was that process for you, being much more personal?
So for me, the process of editing, just for context, I was actually doing it at the same time I was like finishing my PhD, which was also being edited.
God.
Yeah. And honestly, I had a very sensitive, gentle editor for the memoir that was honestly like light and day between the PhD, where they just they've got no qualms with red pen or telling you you're wrong.
Right. Okay.
It was actually the edit. So for me, the editing process was really great. It actually felt collaborative. It felt like a little bit of a relief that I was being taken care of in this like publishing world.
Oh, beautiful.
So so the editing was lovely. It was much more of an emotionally difficult thing when I did a legal edit. So for me, because I name and talk about real people that aren't me, legal edit was quite hardcore. And so a lawyer literally said, you like highlighted certain things and said either you can't say this or you need to change it, or this is true but it sounds a bit like you mean something else.
Okay. Yeah.
And that felt that was difficult because it was very much about telling my truth. And so when someone says, oh, you can't tell your truth, that was a lot harder.
Yeah.
And then I sort of settled it in the sense of I'm telling my emotional truth.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. And when did your memoir get put out into the world?
So 2021. My first event was Sydney Writers Festival, which I think was May.
Oh, that's a big one.
It was a big one. Yeah. So that was a lot. But it was cool. It was really cool. I was paired with it was such a wild experience. Like I think back on it now, it was one of my wildest writer festival events ever. And it was my first. So that was really exciting. also it just felt very cool having gone to Sydney Writers Festival many times. It felt awesome being in it. And also you're sort of guaranteed a bit of an audience, which well, I don't know if you are, but it felt like I was. And I was like, I'm like, honestly, I'm sort of scared to even throw parties for myself. Like I just don't have that particular confidence angle or whatever it is. So yeah, I was like, oh God. It was nerve-wracking. And like when we're talking about the I guess like the confidence rainbow, I'm pretty confident on stage. And that's okay for me. But like the kind of experience of putting it into the world just added a whole different corner of the rainbow that was really nerve-wracking.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of anxiety. And you know, you go to this like hotel and it's like such a cool hotel, and like everyone's making a huge deal out of everything. You know, the program's there. There's like super famous people in the hotel, you know, and then you like go to the event and you're in the green room, and I was just like trying to do my breathing, and you know, someone comes up to me and they're like chatting and they were like relaxed, and I'm like trying to just like hold it together.
You're trying to keep it together, yeah.
Yeah. And I did this like wild event with someone who'd written a book about donor babies. So children who are conceived using donated egg or sperm or whatever combination. And she was very anti donor babies, and she had been a donor baby herself but hadn't known about it until she was a grown up. And so she had quite a lot of emotional baggage about the whole experience. But then I was like this queer writer, and then we were being moderated by Maeve Marsden, who literally,
she's lovely.
She's awesome. And I'm so like, no one else would have been able to handle this panel, but she did. And because she is both a donor baby and was pregnant with a donor baby at that moment. And this like journalist who was really anti the whole thing, and then like me, and I was just so relieved it was Maeve, who I was familiar with, and I just knew would be able to do it.
Yeah. God, what a ride. What an experience.
I know, it was like spicy, and the questions were wild, and it was a super queer audience because of me and Maeve, I guess. And then yeah, it was full on. But then like the party afterwards was great, you know.
Yeah, get rid of all that tension at the party afterwards. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so you've mentioned, Kai, that you've just submitted your next manuscript. Is that fiction?
It is fiction.
What can you say about that?
I'm like really comfortable talking about it. I don't have a problem doing that. I don't know if there's like reasons why you shouldn't.
I don't know either. I've always been curious when writers are like, I can't talk about it. I'm like, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not under some kind of like it doesn't have a deal yet. So it's not like I'm under some kind of, I don't know. Also, it's not like state secrets. Do you know what I mean? This is just, yeah. So I've written a novel. It's young adult, classic coming of age tale. It's a bit of a riff off Romeo and Juliet with like a young queer character who living their life and then goes off to Tropical Fruits Festival up in Lismore and explores themselves, their body, other people's bodies, and has a wild time in a fairly like safe community situation, basically.
Awesome. And so how was that experience for you writing something like, fiction?
It was a totally different experience. I describe it as joyous. Like it was really fun. I was super strategic in how I set that out as well. Like I just feel like I'm in a place in my life where I'm a bit more in control of how my life works. I very intentionally worked out how to apply for a grant with Arts ACT, and did a lot of work and research into how I could optimize it and how much I should ask for. And I ended up getting a grant.
Congratulations. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So that was $25,000, which is not to be sneezed at.
No.
And much more than any advance I'm probably ever going to get. So got that, went 4 days a week at my day job. So wrote 1 day a week, which is a formula that worked for me with my memoir. At the time I was doing a PhD, so I had a bit more control over my time. But yeah, so this time I just went 4 days a week, got a mentorship with Catherine Hayman.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, bit of an icon. And so did the mentorship, wrote wrote the book. Also did, for the first time, I really looked at books on creativity, books on plot and storytelling and, creativity in general. And that was a really kind of cool experience. And it just felt honestly very playful and fun. And like I had a license to kind of do whatever I wanted. And I loved it. I had a great time.
Yeah, how wonderful. And actually, I was going to ask you about how you balance work and writing, but it sounds like, as you said, you were very strategic and figured out what you needed to do, which was the extra day, right? Or that one day. Yeah,
it works for me. I need to have that dedicated time. I don't work well if I'm flipping and flopping between lots of other things. I can't just like take lunch break and do right. I mean, I can sort of try, but it doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
And I think also, especially for fiction, or for me anyway, there's this kind of concept of shutting everything out so you can have freedom. And like, I just have to like really, like, life is pressurized for everyone, right? And to do creative work under pressure just wasn't going to work for me. And so I just needed to totally isolate time so that I could really play and create something without a kind of without that sort of pressure. It's hard to describe. But having read these creativity books now, like, I'm starting to understand that's what helped. It helped me with my practice almost more than with the content. And creating a writing practice is something I really understand now, and it's so important, I think.
So does that mean that before you started writing this particular manuscript, you didn't have a dedicated writing practice?
Well, I say I came and went. So like when I was doing my PhD and I was writing my memoir, I wrote on Mondays. Okay. But no one was stopping me, like no one was watching over my shoulder. Whereas now I'm like, I work for an environmental consultancy and my time is charged by the hour. So I have to deliver 8 hours of work a day. I had that 1 day a week practice during my PhD. After I finished my PhD and I was working full time, I didn't have a practice in that sense. I sort of did here and there when I had time off on weekends. Then when I got back to that 4 days a week, working 1 day a week, writing, I was like, okay, this is it. Yeah. And that has worked.
Yeah. For me. So are you going to try and keep that practice going, or are you back to full-time work?
So I've paid work? Spent the grant now. But I just couldn't bring myself to go back to 5 days a week. Like I was like, I just thought about it. I tried to like visualize it, and I was like, I can't do it. And I can afford it. And I was like, this is a privilege that I'm going to enjoy. And so I just work 4 days a week still. And that 5th day, I either do an adventure, like go out, like this weekend, we're going canoeing, or I'll do writing from writing mode, or I might use it to go to an event, say a writers' festival or something. But I do, whatever it is, I try and keep it intentional.
Yeah. I really like that.
Don't do laundry. What I'm trying to say is I don't do boring shit.
Yeah, exactly. You've got 6 other days, in fact, to do that.
Exactly.
And also in terms of when you started to write this manuscript, Romeo, A Tale of Four Jumps, I really love the title. Awesome. Did you feel any pressure or any type of, I don't know, worry or fear or misgivings about, moving from forms, memoir to fiction?
Look, honestly, I didn't think about it. I mean, having tried to very intentionally take on a creative practice, I just, and having, although I have 1 day a week, it still feels like only 1 day a week. And I'm only going to spend it doing something that truly drives me. Like writing a book is hard, and you have to have something sustaining you. And so I just went with the thing that stirred my soul.
Yeah.
So sure. I wasn't nervous about moving to fiction at all. And then when I like submitted it to my agent, she was like, oh, this is great. She was like, oh, I was a bit worried because moving from memoir to fiction is really hard. And I was like, oh.
I didn't know that, which is probably a good thing that you didn't know that.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So it sounds like, Kai, that, because having spoken to lots of different emerging writers and debut writers, some of us and I did at one point as well. There's a real sense of urgency, like, oh my God, if I don't write this thing or if I don't grab this opportunity, it's gone forever. But it sounds like you don't have that, or you've figured out how to write that.
I absolutely have a sense of urgency, but I try and keep it out the door when I'm writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you probably channel that urgency.
Discipline. Yeah.
We try and channel that urgency into planning, or getting those grant dates, or that kind of thing. And then I try to sort of negotiate with it when it's things like, oh, this is really topical, I need to get it out now, but I have no control over that. So I do have that sense of urgency in many ways, but I definitely try and keep it out of the door. Yeah.
And it sounds like you've gotten quite good at channeling it into things you can do, like
and like those things are hard, and artists are always bad at them usually, but you've got to, like, I don't know, try and like use your skills. Like, I'm 40 now, I've accumulated other skills, I can do admin, and to try and channel that kind of logistical energy into that.
So we are actually nearly out of time, and you've actually given me lots and lots of good tips, but the final question I have is, do you have any top tip or tips for emerging writers?
Yeah, I mean, when I have said those things in response to your questions, I think about, oh, well, that's what Stephen King talked about, write the first draft with the door closed, second draft, the door open. It's kind of helpful conceptually, but I say the most helpful thing, I think, is developing that practice. So lots of people will tell you what works for them, or they'll tell you what is absolutely you must do, but it is about what works for you. Yeah. So if you got small children or whatever, working 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. might be your time for practice, or like you just have to work it out so that you come to the table, or you come to the desk, or whatever it is, with regularity, however short or infrequent it is, to just honor some commitment that in a way that works for you.
Exactly, because I think people get trapped into the comparison, like, oh, well, so-and-so can write 5 days a week, but I can only write 2. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you just got to find that practice, and like, you will make progress even if it is incremental.
Exactly. Progress is progress. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been absolutely delightful having this chat with you.
Me too. I really enjoyed it. The only thing I have to hold back is I want to ask you too. I want to know what your practice is.
We'll do that offline.
Okay.
But honestly, best of luck with your manuscript, and I hope it's not long before we see it on shelves.
Yeah, neither. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks, Kaya.
Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the pod so you can receive updates as soon as our new eps drop. And to keep up to date with what the pod is doing, you can also find us on Instagram.